My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC picks and DraftKings lineups run by professional fighters and MMA insiders. Every week, I join Nick Newell, professional fighter, professional model, and ESPN Top 10 guest, along with Dan Kramer, UFC fighter, Bellator fighter, Ultimate Fighter alumni, and Jacob Lyons, a skinny kid from Indiana. And we break down every single fight, the betting odds, the DraftKings picks, and we set you up for success. So weigh-ins were a mess. A bunch of people missed weight. The Alves-Sabatini fight is completely off the card because Alves missed by almost 12 pounds, 2 weight classes worth of additional weight that shouldn't have been there. So we're going to walk through our lineups, who we dropped, why we dropped them, who we picked up, and I'd be curious to hear from you guys if you took anybody out of your lineup because of how they looked at weigh-ins. Maybe somebody missed and they looked half dead, and did you take them out, or did you not worry about that and you continued on? So we're going to go through our lineups now. Jacob, we're just going to go left to right here. Walk us through your lineup and what changes you may have made since the other day.
No changes for me as far as weight cutting goes. We'll just go top to bottom here. First of all, we have Aspinall. I think we're all pretty confident in his abilities, especially to get that under-minute knockout, that 25-point bonus. That's going to be huge for me. Then we go to Curtis Blaydes, and actually I'm more confident in Curtis Blaydes in this pick after watching one of his interviews from earlier in this week, how he talked about how he knows he's a boring fighter and he frankly doesn't care. He says he's pretty petty and that when people say you're boring, he wants to be more boring, which bodes well with him because if he tries to stand and bang with Derek Lewis, it's going to be bad news and he knows it, and that's good. Then we're doing Philip Hawes. You know, I'm wrestler heavy now ever since they made a few changes with the scoring, with control time. Takedowns are 5 points, and Philip Hawes is going to run over and get some takedowns. Landwehr was one of those that he was the last to weigh in. He had like 5 minutes left. He got on the scale. They read the number. I think it was 146, and he lets out a yes, like it was a tough cut. But reading the comments, it seems like he's had not issues before, but it's been a tough cut before. So it's not like something he's not unaccustomed to. So that doesn't bother me at all. Luis Pena, I put in my lineup. That face-off was wild. He is huge, and this was a short-notice fight, and he didn't seem to have any issues cutting the weight, and he's just a monster. So he's in my lineup. And last but not least is Chad Skelly, my lock of the week. You know, he's just another monster grappler, and if he gets the fight on the ground, he's going to dominate and he's going to win. So this is definitely a 5 for 6. That Pena, you know, being the big underdog, he's not going to get finished, but he could get outpointed if it's a striking match. But other than that, this is definitely 5 for 6. Definitely could be a 6 for 6.
Yeah, so I disagree with you. You said you think Aspinall may be able to get that under 1 minute knockout. I completely disagree. I think he's going to win. He's in my lineup, but I don't think he's knocking Andrei Arlovski out in under a minute. I just don't see that. Andrei Arlovski's too much of a vet. I think his chin is sort of going, and he's aging, and his speed is sort of going, but he's too much of a veteran. He was never I'm just going to, take to give kind of guy.
Your argument is you just said his chin is going, his speed is going, but because he's a veteran, he won't get knocked out. Okay. He's not going to get knocked down under a minute. You want to bet? I'll straight up bet you on the side. I do not see that happening. He's too much of a veteran. And we just talked about on our last video that the risk is he's so savvy that this is going to be more of a, let me get rid of the distance. I'm going to hold him against the cage and I'll work from there. I have Aspinall in my lineup. I hope it is under a minute knockout. But if we're going through the entire card and you're looking for an under 1 minute knockout, I don't think Aspinall's the guy. The argument seems weird to me. You say your argument is that he's too old to get knocked out, basically. He's a veteran. He's too old to get knocked out.
Boys. Let's, I think we're all on the same page here. Aspinall is going to be the better boxer, younger boxer at least, right? When that knockout comes, I'm interested to see if you guys take that bet under 1 minute knockout.
I'll take that bet all day. Not going to happen.
Yeah, we'll figure out the odds.
Yeah, I bet we will. So the other thing I wanted to note here, I was just looking at the comments section. We had 2 people comment on our Skelly versus Emmers video. And somebody said that Skelly is coming off of a shoulder injury. So JB Betts seems to have some inside information. I've pinned that comment so everybody can see it. I don't know what where that may have come from, but it's worth noting that there's some theory out there that Skelly has a shoulder injury coming off of it, and that may affect his performance. So, Dan, let's walk through your lineup. It's somewhat similar. You have some differences here with Jacob. Let us know if you've made any changes and why.
Sure. So yeah, I made a few changes from my previous lineup. Some of it was weight cut related. Some of it was kind of just gut feel at the last minute in terms of who was going to score points. So I had Gordon in my original lineup. He missed weight, so that was one of those things that when guys miss weight, it always throws me off a little bit. I know weight cutting is tough, but generally, if you miss weight, I always attribute that to not being ready in some sense. So I took him out in what I thought was going to be a close fight anyways. I also took Vandera out, and it pained me to do that because I really think Vandera is a live underdog in this fight. I just don't know that he'll score a lot of points if he wins the fight the way he needs to. He could take the guy down, he could finish him, but he also could take him down and hold him for 3 rounds. So I took him out of my lineup, but I am going to put a little side bet on him. And then the way the dollars worked out, I had to play around with some things. So Hawes is no longer in my lineup, but all my replacements, I think I ended up with a better lineup overall. So first I got Aspinall over Arlovsky. We talked about it. Aspinall is just a younger fighter here. He's got high level boxing. I think in this fight, he needs to use that youth and boxing endurance to really push the pace. Arlovsky's won some of his recent fights against younger guys that on paper probably should have won, but they let him dictate the pace, right? When you let a veteran dictate the pace, they find tricky ways to win rounds. They're smart. Arlovsky is that guy. I think if Aspinall, knowing he's the potentially better boxer, probably better boxer, and younger athlete, pushes the pace skillfully, I think he'll win. I don't know if he'll get it under 1 minute knockout, but I could see him catching him at some point if he pushes the pace. Then I got Curtis Blaydes. We've all talked about this one. I mean, guy's one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division. Insane cardio, 5-round cardio. Lewis, getting better at takedown defense, but not notoriously known for staying on his feet. So Lewis is always live for a knockout here, but I got to take Blaydes. I got to imagine he's going to take him down, wear on him, and I'm thinking potentially get a ground and pound or sub finish in rounds 3 or 4. After that, I got Dobson. So I added her in my lineup. I think we talked about it the first time. I think she's very live for an upset in this fight. So I think it's going to be a close fight. When it first started, she was a plus 185 underdog. She's now around plus 135 to 140. And this fight really comes down to 2 things for me. Number one, the level of competition O'Neal has been up against at this point. As we said in our breakdown, her dad was the promoter for the league that she fought in for almost all her previous fights. Got to imagine he's picking good matchups for her to build her record. And most of her opponents were 0-0 when they fought. And the people she fought with better records had mostly opponents with, almost no fights. So I think level of competition is heavily favoring Dobson. And number 2, I think is a big one. Dobson moved her training camp full-time to the Elevation Fight Team. She's been there for over a year now. I'm sure she's improving drastically. I'm banking on that, actually. She trains with Mallory Martin, Rose Namajunas now. So she's in a legit camp training with very good fighters every day. And I think she's young enough and athletic enough to where we're going to see some major improvements. So for $7,700, I think she's a great value play. Then I got Arosa over Landwehr. This one's got fight of the night written all over it. I think Arosa's just the better boxer. I think Landwehr's tough as can be. I like Landwehr. I think his style is awesome. Like, if I weren't playing DraftKings, I'd probably be rooting for him just because he's a cool dude. But I think Arosa is improving dramatically. I think he's one of those guys that hasn't truly shown what he's capable of yet. He went on a little skid there, but his last couple of fights, he's looked awesome. So I think this is going to be a slugfest, and I'll give the slight edge to Arosa just because I think he's a more skilled striker. After that, we got Chaz Skelly, and we talked about this one too. Very live for underdog. Did not know about the shoulder injury, but honestly, after watching the way he fights, this dude is just tough. He's like a zombie. And if you look at his record, he's beaten a lot of good guys, and his losses were very close fights to very, very good guys. So I think for $7,400, he's a great value. Emmers is also really, really good. But for the $7,400, if Skelly can make this a grappling match, get to his back, get him to the ground, make it ugly, I think he can win a 3-round decision or potentially go for that rear naked choke that he gets in a lot of his fights. So I think he's very live in this fight. And then last, I added in after watching a little bit more tape. So I got the veteran Eddie Wineland. So I think this is going to be another close fight, but I'm going to go with the battle-tested vet. He's a slugger with power in his hands. Castaneda is more of, from what I've seen, a 3-round fighter. Very technical, very good fighter. But I think Wineland's going to come at him, pressure him, throw power shots. And I don't think Castaneda has been tested like that before. So the other thing is Eddie Wineland's fought the best of the best for years and years. And he's won some, he's lost some. But he's still, I think he's 37 years old. So he's getting up there, but he's not that old yet. So I'm going with Wineland with the upside of a stoppage or being in a 3-round slugfest against Castaneda. So that's my lineup. Bunch of underdogs that I think will get a lot of points and some heavy favorites too that I think will score well.
Dan, that Wineland KO from Sean O'Malley, that doesn't give you any pause or concern? I mean, he was
not really. It was kind of, I mean, we'll see. You could be right. We'll see. I would say prior to that, I hadn't seen his chin go out like that, but let's be honest. I mean, O'Malley landed a clean shot. That happens in fights, you know. I think stylistically, O'Malley was a bad matchup for Wineland, who's a little bit of a brawler. The difference in that fight is that O'Malley's got one punch knockout power. I don't think Castaneda does. So where Wineland coming in with that wide stance brawling against Castaneda, I don't think Castaneda can put him away. I think he'll walk through some shots and he'll land a big one of his own. Where with O'Malley, he landed a big shot and it put him away. So I think just it's a little different stylistically in terms of power that O'Malley has versus what Castaneda has.
Got it. And I looked up the Chaz Kelly thing. The injury was over a year ago, didn't require surgery. So it's not like he had a major surgery or he hurt it, 6 weeks ago. It was last year. He pulled out a fight. He said he hurt it rolling and he was just going to rehab it. And so it's been a year and it didn't require surgery. So I don't think it's going to be an issue for Chaz.
Chaz Kelly's the sort of guy who could probably fight with a dislocated shoulder for 3 rounds and still be competitive.
So your lineup, a little risky, honestly. You have a couple heavy underdogs in Dobson and Skelly, but we all believe in Skelly. Eddie Wineland's risky. And
how much money did you have left over?
$300, I believe.
It's better than I thought. For some reason, when you look at that, it looks like there's $700 or $800 left over.
Nope, I got 300. Yeah, I gave it a double look too, but yeah, no, $300 left over. I mean, I got Blaydes and Aspinall. They're a lot of my budget, right? But
yeah.
In this situation, a lot of the underdogs I got weren't as cheap as you'd think. $7,700 for Dobson, probably a little bit more expensive than I want to pay. But honestly, I feel pretty good about it just based off of what I'm seeing in her training camp. Skelly at $7,400, I think, is a steal. Wineland at $7,900, again, a little bit more expensive than I want to pay, but I think the veteran and the power in his hands is going to be the factor here. And the lack of finishing, or what I think to be lack of finishing ability from Castaneda, will be a lot of points and potentially a win for Wineland.
Yeah, it's interesting because Skelly being so cheap at $7,400, it's almost like Dobson and Skelly, their amounts should be flipped. So if they're both in your lineup, then it's like you get them for, the good value.
That's a good point. That's actually, I think that both their dollar amounts probably should be flipped and it would make a lot of sense. So either way, I'd end up with the same lineup.
Right.
All right. So let me walk through mine. I did not make any changes, so I'll walk through this quickly. I'm on the Aspinall train, as is almost everybody else. I think he beats Andrei Arlovski. I'm hoping he finishes him. I just don't know. When. And the X factor, anytime you have such a vet like Andrei Arlovski in there, is, like Dan said, can the vet dictate the pace? Can he stay away from those big shots, close that distance, hold him against the cage and fight from there? So we'll see how that goes. But Aspinall's been training with world-class boxers, and he's great jiu-jitsu as well. So he should win that fight. I took him at that price because I think he's worth it. We all went Curtis Blaydes. I'm going to tell you right now, Curtis Blaydes is going to be in basically every single person's lineup. The problem is I think he's going to be the highest scorer on the card. I think he has to be in your lineup. It'd be foolish not to put him in there. Between all of the takedown points, the control time, he is busy during a takedown. So people say he's boring. That's just because the whole fight is on the mat, but he's busy. He's throwing strikes. I think he's the highest scorer, beyond anybody else, especially he has 5 rounds to do what he wants to do. I've gotten some questions around, hey, I do captain's mode in my, in the leagues that I join. Who should be in my captain slot? I think Curtis Blaydes is a great person for the captain slot. If he's too expensive for the captain slot, then I think an Aspinall might be good for that slot as well. I went Daukaus over Olenek, so I just think he can get it done. I think Olenek, another tricky vet. I'm going with all the non-vets here. Olenek, another tricky vet, but I think Daukaus is he's on a bit of a streak. He's looked pretty good, and he's got some solid power. I'm keeping Phil Hawes in my lineup. It worries me a little bit. If you go back, he has a couple of losses, and in those losses, he did not look very good at all. And he's looked phenomenal in the past few fights. And I just hope that continues, right? I hope that's the streak he's on. He's an amazing wrestler. He's found power in his hands, and hopefully he continues to mix his wrestling and his power and not just, oh my God, I can knock people out. I love this. Let me just do that all day, because that's when you start to get into some trouble. I'm going with Minner over Rosa. A lot of you are not loving that pick. I'm seeing the comments, but I think the wrestling is the difference here. I think it's an evenly matched fight for the most part, but Minner has the better wrestling, and I think that will sort of dictate where the fight goes. And then I'm going with Vandera over Spivak. Again, I'm going with a wrestler here. Mostly, Spivak's a grappler, that solid Sambo background that we talked about, but Vandera, the more traditional wrestler, can dictate where the fight goes if he doesn't like it standing. And that's why if all else being equal, I'll usually go with the wrestler in those type cases for that exact reason. They can dictate where the fight goes. If you have questions about any of these fights or want more about some of these matchups, go to our other videos. We broke down every single fight in detail, every single matchup in detail. So some of these questionable ones are ones that you don't know enough about. Check those videos out and you'll get those details. Let me walk through Nick's very quickly. Nick made a few small changes. So Curtis Blaydes, we talked about that top to bottom. Nick is going with Andrei Arlovski for 2 reasons. 1, he's very cheap at $7,000. And 2, he is a vet. So Nick genuinely thinks Andrei is going to win the fight. But even if he doesn't, Nick thinks he'll avoid an early stoppage and get some points on the board because he is a vet. And also throwing him in there freed up a bunch of budget for people like Drakkar Klose and Curtis Blaydes. He's going with Charles Rosa over Minor. He trained with Charles Rosa in the past. He feels very strong in his abilities. He knows how tricky Charles is, so he's going with Charles. He also went Nate Landwehr. Loves that dude. He's just heavy forward pressure, nonstop wrestling, and he thinks that not only is he going to score a lot of points, but he'll be able to bang out a win. And then another Chaz Skelly pick for the same reasons we discussed earlier. A live underdog, super tough, and is really going to put the pace on. So for the most part, our lineup stayed somewhat the same. It sounds like the weigh-ins and a couple of missed weights affected your lineup, Dan. You mentioned anytime somebody misses weight, you question it because something was missing in that camp. Either it was a really hard weight cut and you missed, and now you're exhausted and drained, or maybe you didn't prepare the way you were supposed to leading up to that fight, and you'd rather not deal with that. So that's a fair assessment. Anything else to add here, guys? Anybody you're really, really loving as a lock that should be in everybody's lineup besides Curtis Blaydes?
I'll say that I'm really looking forward to that Drakkar Klose and Pena fight. For some reason, I'm pretty confident in Pena to withstand the barrage and get it to the ground. And the way Nick has been talking is he's very confident in Klose to be able to finish Pena. So I think that's going to be a fight that is going to play out. We'll see how it plays out. It's going to be a very interesting fight. But yeah, Dan, I don't know if there's anything that caught your eye in anyone's lineup.
No, I think we all got some pretty solid lineups, everything makes sense, right? Especially when you have to break it down into a budget on DraftKings. One thing I will say is I'm going to be doing some side bets, and the way it's looking is I'm going with a lot of underdogs tonight. So if all the favorites are winning tonight, just know that I'm going to be probably losing some money. And if the underdogs are winning,
we'll start a Patreon.
It's going to be a good week, right? So, no, I just think there's a lot of fights on this card where there's older veterans against young and upcoming guys, and the older veterans have looked pretty good of late, and the younger up and coming guys haven't really fought that level of competition yet. So I think a lot of them are going to be, hey, we're going to find out if this guy or girl is legit, or is the veteran going to reign supreme, right? We've seen that happen a lot lately with my buddy Glover Teixeira, continues to kill it. So I tend to put a lot of faith in guys who have done it and been doing it for years over kind of the up and coming flashy guys who haven't really fought the tough level of competition yet. So it'll be interesting to see. Well, I think it's going to be a great card, a lot of interesting fights.
I'll make another prediction here. One more prediction. That Vanderaa will be the biggest dud in anyone's lineups. That's for you, Angelo. The biggest dud.
I don't agree with you there, Jake. I mean, you could be right. I don't know. That's a tough one, but you mean a dud in the sense that he's going to get steamrolled by Spivak?
He might score 7 points.
In a win or in a loss? Obviously,
He'll score 7 points. He will lose and will score under 10 points.
He's just throwing out nonsense. Ignore that nonsense.
I'm betting on Vanderaa at +2 something. I think I got odds-wise.
See if you can get that money back, Dan.
No, I'll tell you right now. Like I said earlier, Spivak's looked very, very hit or miss in a lot of fights, but Vanderaa is a legit 275-pound heavyweight. So again, if he fights smart and fights the right way, I think he can win. But if he tries to strike Spivak, he'll have a problem. But takes him down.
That's not even as much on Vanderaa as I just think I think that's one of those fights where they just kind of stare at each other. I think it's just a boring fight.
Really? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, and yeah, I mean, we will see. And if anybody's questioning the nonsense that Jacob's throwing up at the wall right now, check out that comparison video. We break it down pretty.
He may not be wrong, by the way. It's an interesting fight. I just think from what I saw in that Tybura fight, it scares me about Spivak. When he was on his back, he was in no man's land. But then there are other fights where he looked really good. So it's tough to say, but I think size is a factor in this fight.
Well, either way, we've got 4 solid lineups for you here. Just make sure before the fight card starts, half an hour before, come back, check. We may not have an updated video if there's a drop, but certainly check the community section, Facebook page, Twitter. If anything changes, if there is another last-minute drop, which has been possible and has been happening these past few weeks, just come back, double check. If we've made lineup changes, we'll let you know. Or if somebody drops, we'll recommend a similarly priced person to slide into that position for you. So thanks for the watch. Comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And why don't you let us know who you think has the best lineup, and then we'll come back in the recap show and talk about it. Before you go, check out the description below. In there, we have links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, and more importantly, to our DraftKings League. Check out the league, join the league, participate in the contests, and as we get going and as you start winning, we're going to start handing out gift cards and participating and doing things like that. So check those out. Every week, there are drops on every fight card. So make sure you check out this channel and our social media on Saturday before the fights start so that you have our most updated lineups and picks.